Right, okay, here we are at Meriden Church. Going to do a little bit of sketching, painting. We've had a little wander around and I've decided I'm going to do this awkward view here just to show you how to start. Okay, let's get going. Little view there. Sorry, Hannah, so you can start to see what you want to and how much you want to put in your picture. And you might try it the other way around. You might have it so it's upright and think, okay, I'll have a portrait style one rather than the landscape. How much can I get in? What's the dominant things in there? We'll try and do that. That wall's going to come halfway up here. That might be a bit big for it. You might end up having a lot of wall in there and no church, and then that bit of background, and you just start to get yourself orientated for how much you want to do. So I think that view looks better than that one, but it's just a little feel for it first without, and it's all getting your eye in as well. It's all getting to grips with looking at the view, and that's you start to do. So one or two people were asking yesterday about how do you start. If I've got a big piece of paper, when you're outdoors sketching and drawing, I wouldn't normally work that big. I think I showed you the other day about my little sketchbooks. I tend to work this size to fit them all into that sort of size sketchbooks, and I tend to do watercolours, although you don't have to, but that's the size I work. It's a lot smaller than that. But if you are working on this size paper, what I'd suggest is to draw a little box just very faintly inboard of that, a couple of inches inboard, because when you're outdoor sketching, what you tend to do is go too big to start off with. You get bigger, and then all of a sudden you can't get it on your piece of paper. It all expands. You start to work and it just gets far too big in there. And I think these walls are going to be quite dominant in this particular one, so we won't make too much of the wall. I might ignore that bit of wall, make it a bit lower or something like that, because it's the church in the background that I want to do. So then I'm going to make a start on here, and you've got to take something as a bit of a measure in there. I'm just trying to think what I can use as my measure for that. Perhaps I'll take the height of the window, because that's a nice one. Shut one eye, pencil at the top, thumb at the bottom. That's giving me
leg.
And one leg, yeah, balance and whistle at the same time to give you, because that's going to be a nice, decent, chunky thing to measure in there. And then move that measure around the picture. So if I start with that window, bring it down, that comes to roughly the bottom of that wall. If I take it up, move it all the way up, that's roughly the church spire. The cockerel is above it, and the roof is just below it, so I can sort of get an idea of how tall that is. So that's 3. So there's 1, 2, 3 of the window measures in that thing. If I turn it round sideways, 1, 2 is about the gap of the wall there. So if I look at my little drawing here, so if I guess it's offset, it's off to one side, if I guess my measure to be something like that, that means I can get very quickly, I can realign my thing. 1 will take it up there, 1 will bring it down here, 1, 2 across here. Already it's a bit too big, so just have to take it down a little bit to give me my measure. So that's where the window's going to be. Somewhere it's off centre, it's over to the one side.
It looks quite small, doesn't it?
It looks quite small. That's what I say, put this box around it, because it will grow. It will be surprising how it grows. So I said 1 measure up, so 1 measure up, just vaguely put a line. The church spire is going to be across from here somewhere. We'll work out where it is across in a moment, and the cockerel will be above it, the roof will be below it. 1 measure down was the bottom of this wall, so it's the bottom of that wall where that bank is. So you're starting to get a few things in proportion. I can have that wall just overlapping here. It'll be somewhere like that is the side of the wall, and it goes, there's my window. From the bottom of the wall it goes nearly 3/4 of the way up to the top. So this is this front wall here. It's surprisingly big in comparison to the rest of it. Let's just get an angle, use a whole pencil as an angle, just line it up with the top there. If it was horizontal it'd be there, but it's not, it's slightly sloping, it's about a minute before horizontal. So we just bring it down slightly, don't get run over as the cars come past.
How inconvenient.
Oh, it's reversing, you're alright. So I'll start to put the window in.
Different angle to this.
Yeah, everybody's will be slightly different to me. Right, so if I go back to that measure, look at it sideways. 1 is where the spire comes across. 1, take it up Was that correct? Let's just have another check. Yeah, one from that side is just about where the spire comes. One across to here. You can put your finger on if you want to. That's somewhere around there is the middle of that spire. So it's a bit closer to it than I thought there. Go back to that measure, turn it round sideways. The width of the window is just over half. Width of the window is just over half, so yeah, my little guess was about right there. Back to my measure. Down to the bottom of it is about a third of the way down, so about a third of the way down is about here. That's starting to put these in. Where does the top of it go? Back to my measure. The top of it is it's about 3/4 of the measure up to the top. I might just have to put my finger on for that. 3/4 is the top of it. It's the pointy bit is over the pointy bit of the arch of the window. Angle of the windows here, just to get that angle down here, is about like that. Draw one in, recheck it. So you line it up with that, recheck it, because the first line you put on will be wrong. Just recheck it on the other side, just put a line in. It's about like that. Put a line in, recheck it. Yeah, slightly out. It needs to be just a little bit wider on that. You can do a different thing with getting your angles. You can line it up like that, bring your paper up behind it to check it. So you're locking your arm and you're not moving your arm, because a lot of people, as soon as they do that, they go, ooh, ooh, they move it to suit what they've drawn on here. So the angle bits is probably quite an important one to get right. So look to see where it comes in relation to your window. It comes right down to about here somewhere. About halfway up that is the other little roof coming across, which again is another funny little angle going across there. We've got to get the church tower in. There's not much gap for me here, so that's where my church tower starts. It goes up to that line that I've already got there. That is horizontal there. Then you've got a very steep angle going away from it. Oh, let's just get the width of the church tower. Back to my measure. Width of the church tower is about 3/4 of that. Whatever made that. Width of the church tower is about 3/4. The side of it is just a little bit of a side there. Very steep angle on the bit coming down the side here. Lining up the angle on the side of the church. Somebody falling off a chair. Just bringing it down. Put an angle on, recheck it. And then you got another one at the top there. That's starting to get that in. That gives me my pointy bit on the top here. And you get your church tower in, roughly, somewhere around there. We'll just start to see where the other bit of this opening of the gateway comes. 1, 2 across. 1, finger on it. 2, finger on it. This 2 across is where the other side of the wall comes. Are they level tops? No, this one's just slightly starting to slope. So down here it's just a little bit slopey down there. That one's quite a bit lower on that side. Right, I'm glad I put that little bit of the extra space on there, because you want the bank to come in. And up there's my wall coming up. And we'll start to do the fiddly bits of the edging on there. Should really check those, but we're not going to, for a bit of speed. Little gateway, we'll have to check that angle of the gate.
Why is it semi-closed, Julie? Would it look better?
It doesn't matter, it won't close into that gap, so there's half a gate missing over there. So I can invent that anyway, and make sure it goes in something like that if I wanted to. And I don't think we dare move that stick that's propping it open. Probably never get it back in the same place again. There's probably been another bit of gateway there. You have to put in this big tombstone, I'm afraid, because it's a big chunky one in the middle there. Again, you'd measure it. Just a few more angles to go. Just that one to put in here. And again, we've got that one going across there. That one comes out the top of the wall. It goes across. Where does it come to? Is it level with the top? Almost level with the top of the window. Not quite. And then it goes up at an angle. And there we have the bones of a drawing.
Wow.
Right, it's started. You've got all the fiddly bits to put in. It's when you start to do all the fiddly little bits of wall that you suddenly realise things don't fit. But that's roughly
Those
what I
little
want to do.
angle walls, by the window, those do me.
These ones, they're because they're coming towards you. Those supports, yeah. They're little tiny triangles, something like that, in there. So once you get that structure in there, and it is quite a complex one, you're not doing it. You can go and do the other things around here if you want to. It's not compulsory. You can then get into as much detail as you want. Once you start getting all those bits in, you can either do the detail with your pencil, so you can either keep going with that and bringing it all in. The interesting one is get your bricks. Just you don't want to put all those bricks in the wall, but you just want to put a hint of them in there, and make sure you get your angles right on your brickwork, which they are more or less parallel because they're coming towards you, but you don't want to put every single brick, but just a little hint of brick in there gives you a sense of scale and perspective. So from there, if you wanted to do it just as a drawing, you'd really get into it now with your pencil and start to get into all the shading. If you wanted to do it as a tonal work, you could get into the shading again with your pencil, and then just put a hint of colour on. I think I might do that actually, because we started to do it last week. And then you can put a little bit of, that's in the wrong place, just notice that's not in the right place there, so I'll move him over, and then put a hint of colour into it. Or you can just do it, or you do it as a watercolour, because this is where I'd start to do it as a watercolour now. So which do you want? Shall I do it as a little watercolour for you, or
Yeah.
do it as a watercolour? And then you've got this bank, you see, coming down the bottom here, and a few flowery things. This is a bee, but I tend to use a B or a 2B really if I'm out sketching. See, already with that I've expanded. You know that little line that I put in here? It's starting to expand from that edge, because my cockerel will go above that line, which would have been very inconvenient if I'd done it right to the edge of the paper. You couldn't get that last little bit in, so if you just give yourself that little border to go round if you start to sketch, it just helps with that one. Right, a quickish watercolour then. It's by popular demands. So if you've now got bored and want to go off and do your own, I shall just carry on and do a bit here for people, but otherwise I shall do a bit of a watercolour-y thing, because I know some people want to have a look at that. I'm just putting a few little bit more detail in so I know where to stop and start my colours. So there's the crenellations at the top of the church there. There's a little bit of a marking in there. Right, so I'm just going to duck down and get my watercolours on the go here. Let's just test my colour on that, it's a bit strong. I'll put a bit of red into that as well. I'm just mixing up a bit of colour for a shadowy colour, and it's quite handy to put some of your shadows and tones in, something like that, that'll do. And because the sun was in, now it's just starting to come out, I can start to flick in all these little bits which are quite dark, like the edges of the crenellations, the little bits of shaping here, just to give me my shapes first. You'll have all these little dashes, and then you can just flood it with colour afterwards and get into more detail with it. But whoa, look at that, the lights suddenly come out. Yeah, because these shadows will change as you're working. So if you
come out just in time,
perfect timing with that, on cue I think they call it, don't they? So I'm just very quickly putting all these shadows in.
while the sun's out.
While the sun's out, there's a big shadow down that wall. It's catching the top there. Underneath that, it's a bit high, still in the wrong place, but never mind. There's a nice big shadow under that arch window. These, come on, don't go in, don't go in.
Gone.
It's gone. Of course, those will be nice and dark in there, but they'll get darker and darker, those bits will. So I'm just trying to work out which are my shadowy bits. There can be a big shadow down that, not quite that big, and that'll go onto that lawn there. And there's a shadow behind this stone there, there's a little stone there, we won't put all those in anyway. I think there's a bit of shadows down that one, and there's a big shadow underneath that. So hopefully that's already starting to look a bit three-dimensional with just those in there, and it'll just help to give the, so it doesn't have to be too accurate. Give me a nice big dark one underneath there, but it just helps to give the shape of it, and a little cross thing at the top there as well, which is quite nice. Okay, so I can relax a bit now. That little panic was over. Now the sun's gone in again. I can just enjoy getting the background and everything else started. But you can start to see that's already starting to look like a three-dimensional building there. Big shadow down there, and that's going to be a bit darker across the top there as well. I think that one's going to be quite dark in there. It's not a shadow, it's just darker bits to it in there. Okay, and relax. Right, so now I'm going to get my bigger brush and I'm going to do the sky in the background. So work background to foreground and just have a bit of fun with this. So just a patch of blue. And see my nice clean palette here.
I can say, can you tell what colours are
very useful.
used?
Yeah, it'll just be a bit of this and a bit of that. So a bit of sky, and we want to leave some patchy bits of white, so I'm just going to push this, put the water on, my nice clean water, way beyond the, it is just a sketch, it's not like a, it's just a useful one to use as a reference thing really. It's not a full detailed painting, but it's quite a loose sketch is what I'm looking for at the moment. Some nice bits of this bright blue sky around here, because this will contrast nicely with that stone. And I'll leave some little bits of fluffy white coming through. Just something like that will do for my sky, because I've already got a bit of grubby grey in there already for the clouds. Don't fuss with it too much. Something like that. And then I want to put some of these green trees in while this is still wet, so I add a bit of yellow to my blue. And these are my background trees. They're far away, they can smudge and blur into the background there. Stop it sharp on the wall. So I want this to be a bit more blurry because it's a distant one. A bit more yellow into it to give me another bit of a tree. And just let that fade away to the back end there. This one's a bit of a darker tree, so there is a bit of dark green. I think this is, no idea what this colour is, but I think it's a dark green. Yeah, that'll do. That'll look a bit more like that, and a bit of yellow into it as well for this one. Slightly different shape to it, because this is a yew tree. And then a bit more darks into that. This dark, I'll put a bit of blue in, that'll make it go darker. So yellow and blue. Well, I think that was a bit of Hooker's green dark or something like that. So you've got a couple of distant background trees in there. Simples. Nice and blurry. So I'm just going to dip my brush in that water down there. While I've got that, we've got this yellowy green at the front here, so as I've got green on my brush, a bit more of the yellow ochre colour into that, because it's very dry looking. And we're just going to put a bit of the greens at the front here. It's a little bit showing through there, but not much. Go over the shadows if you've got shadows on there. Look to see where it's going to go. Yeah, it's a bit behind here. So there's little grey slabs and things into that. But this is like a little undercoat for you. I'm just letting that drag onto dry paper for that to start with, because you're going to get lots of texture and stuff into it anyway. So a bit later on you can work back into it and put some more grasses and things like that into it. So just let it fade away, and especially as my brush is running out of paint anyway. Right, so half done. Might give the brush a bit of a clean. I might swap back to a slightly smaller brush now. That was just a big round, don't even bother bringing my mop brushes and things like that in there. Right, let's have a look at that stone colour. What colour is that? It's a very interesting mix of colour, isn't it? It's not just a brown, there's all sorts of lovely colours into that. So that's just burnt umber, there's a bit of burnt umber and Elysian crimson mixed together. That gives me one sort of shade in there, so that's a bit strong for it. I'm just going to bring that water pot up, excuse me a second. It's a bit of a long way on. I think I might fall off my chair in a minute.
Oh, that's good.
Spill onto my trousers. My able assistant here is holding my water pot for me. So yeah, bit of that. This produce into the bottom there. Bit of that. There's a bit of bluey grey into it. So we'll have a little bit of another puddle with a bit of blue up there. Just looking at all those fantastic colours in there. It's a bit strong, a bit of yellow ochre, perhaps on its own there. That's gone a bit greeny. I'll have to put that in first so it doesn't go green. So I'm just testing a few of these colours out to see what I've got. A bit of that colour, a bit of reddish colour. So I think that's going to be enough for those. A bit more pinky at the top there. So with these bits now, I can just wet these bits on. I think it's probably going to be safer to start off with just wetting these bits over the shadows. And you're just going to splodge in some of those different colours. It's a bit more pinky at that part, so I'll go over those, over the bit on there, a bit of the yellow ochre. I mean, you can take a lot longer to do this if you want to, but it's just fun doing it nice and quickly. Then it changes to a bit more burnt umber into it, burnt umber and ultramarine blue. Oops, I didn't wet it first, did I? Thank you, assistant. I don't really care if I wobble over the lines, which is lucky because I've just wobbled over the lines. It's just giving me that effect of the building there. Let's just wet that one. I'm wetting them because it makes it blurry and it goes a bit, you'll see every brush mark if I don't wet it, so just by wetting it it'll just give you the effect, making it quite blurry, and that's a bit more grey. Again, some of these lovely splodges of different colour. It's really pretty colours in there when you start to look. It's the beauty of learning to paint, you actually learn to look at things properly. And then a bit more the pinky reds and things in there. A bit over that one as well. So this tombstone's a different colour completely. That's a grey colour. Get a bit more into that one. Into those. Right, brick wall. Let's put a bit of colour onto that. A lot more of an orangey red. So cadmium reds for that. Slightly stronger colours because they are. There's bits of blue in there as well. So this is going to be done in 2 coats. I'm going to put a layer of this, clean water, and put a bit of the orangey red on first, and then after that, after I've done that, after it's dried, I'll go back and put a hint of brickwork onto it, a bit of bluey greys in there, a bit more of that orangey red, because it's a completely different colour. Go over the shadows again. Between some of the bits down the bottom here. Again, the same on this side. Bit of the orangey red. Because that lovely bright orangey colour, that really brings this forward. The colours are stronger and brighter as you come forward. And it's blurry in the background, which works. The principles work. A bit of greys and things like that. Oh, not being exactly the right place, but never mind. We'll put something like that on there. Right, so I'll leave that to dry for a few moments. Then while that's drying, I'll go back to that sort of greeny, grey, tombstoney thing there. So I put a bit of. It's only small, so I'll just put a little flat wash over that. It's quite light though. Let's bring that in. Almost white behind it there. Bit of colouring onto the gate. A bit more of a browny grey. That needs a bit more shadow and shape into it in a minute, but I can't do that because it's still wet. So I'll leave that for a few moments. Put some colour on the top of this thing if these are. Oh, that one's dry, that one isn't. Bit of water, just put in a few dots of a bit of grey colour for the lichen on the top. Same on that one. quite a bit lighter. Right now I just need to get some super darks in there. Don't look at this colour I'm using here, because this is Payne's Grey, which I normally ban you from using because I make you mix it, but I will get some other colours mixing into it, so it's not just a plain very dark. And this is where you can really start to flick out. Now these are dry, you can go back in and start to flick out some of these extra dark bits into those, and just go back into some of these shadowy bits, some of these dark corners into those, some of this window. And even some of these little shadows now, you want, like, they're like a double shadow onto them in some places, where they've got an extra bit of dark in there in some places. Little tiny corners coming back to the other. I'm not going to put the drain pipe in, I don't think it warrants it in there. The little window is quite dark. Oops, see, we have a farmer coming up.
Like a tractor.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit big.
Yeah. Just as I'm getting to the finishing touches.
No, that's just my legs have got
Oh, Ollie, yes, this is very
There's another nice little thing that's coming through there now then for a big yeah. Put more darks into this. We're nearly done, folks, so I'll let you wander off in a moment and do your own thing.
rather just watch.
Yeah,
Rather than have to do any work yourselves.
I'm more scared to start now.
Just putting a hint of brickwork over those colours that I've got in there before.
Almost a sketch.
I call it a picture, yes.
And the same on this side. That's a bit more yellow ochre onto those, aren't they? They change colour as they come down here, so you've got different. Let them fade away to nothing at the ends there. I'll probably do a bit more with it. Just last few little bits, you want a few more little bits of green into your foreground here. Yeah, some of that nice dark one and some light one. Grasses.
This one brush.
Two. I use a big one for the sky. So a bigger one for the sky there. Yeah. Just change my colour, get it a bit more yellowy. So you've got different shades in there. A few more grasses. And I'd probably leave it something like that. Okay. Right. There we go.
That's lovely.
Good. So yeah, something like that, slightly leaning, but hey ho. If you wanted to, you could pen it. If you wanted to put it together, you don't. You just get the colours in, or you could put permanent pen on it first, and then just flick some colours into it afterwards if you wanted to. But I just wanted to do a proper watercolouring thing with you rather than that. But you could, if you wanted to, permanent pen. This is a 5. Let's do that one. Permanent pen. And that really does put it together afterwards, so.
These thoughtless cars.
I know.
You need to
I
stop
didn't
this
realise it was
road.
so busy.
It never is it? People live up here.
Yeah. How dare they? Yeah. So you could do it bit with pen, actually pulls it together a bit more, but you don't want to see me go around it all in pen. And what you do if you're doing it with pen, you do the foreground, your main bits with pen. Don't do the background bits with it. Just do a bit like that. It's
So
a bit
if we
more than that.
Sorry, if we were doing pen,
Yep.
would we do all our measuring and everything?
Yes, you're still going
then
to do
go
that.
over it with pen,
You can do it that way if you want
and
to.
then put colour on if we want
Yes. Yep. So if you wanted to do that, you'd do a lot more work with your pen. You'd really get all the darks and all your tones into it with your pen. So you can sharpen it all up.
If it's
Yeah.
waterproof.
Yeah, that's right. You can do that first if you want to. Do it a lot more detailed than that if you want to do it that way around and get into all the different bits with it. And again, that just it crisps it up somehow or other if you're doing a quickish sketch. But you do a lot more with it with your pen, and you can spend all day just doing your pen work if you want to. Don't put my copper in on top there, but that just gives you a bit of a more detail. If you're doing pen work from your foreground to your background, so you put all your pen work in your foreground and then just put less and less as you get towards the background. Right, if you want to have a go for it then, I'll come round and see what you're up to.
Mum.
And have a quick go. Well, you don't have to do that one, that is complicated with all the angles.
I
so
just
see
love that, but I think after yesterday, that is.
over there, on the Barbie. But I think we could all see how really nice they are. Especially if we go around the other side of them. So, Sheila, upside down. Yeah. Sheila, is it yours?
That's mine.
Yeah, it's yours. This is really nice. Are you going to paint it?
Yeah, I need to put shadows in and so forth.
Yes, you can
and
do
put
some
a
more
bit of
shadows
background on the gate.
on the gate with your pen.
Yeah.
So you can do that with your pen, and I'd put a hint of background into that as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Just a little hint with your pen, not too much with your pen, but you do that with your paints as much as anything.
Yeah.
But that's really nice now. You've got everything in proportion, you've got a nice way of drawing with your pen as well. You've got all the texture into it, which will be nice. I'd just flick a bit of paint onto it. Don't worry about it if it doesn't reach the edges and things like that. Don't be too precise with it when you're doing it.